Okay, figured that one out. All right. So, Dr. Kristen, we're going to talk about women's health today and fat loss, and you're an expert in this field, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm so excited to be here today.
Good, good. I'm glad we were able to make this work. So just getting started, I want to talk about women's health and hormones and women over a certain age. I'm going to say 40. I'm in my mid 40s and I've noticed some things just starting to shift, not work the same as they used to, when I was in my 30s and 20s. There is something about getting older that I do appreciate, but I don't like the guessing game. I want things to be able to work properly and I don't want to have that guessing game every day. So, with women in their 40s, and getting into the menopause age, what type of things do you see in your practice that are coming up repeatedly for women um, uh, when they come in to do an initial appointment with you? What are their repeated complaints?
Yeah, so in the 40s, the most common thing I would probably see is the mood changes. Okay, that is by far number one. And a lot of women will go to their doctor and be diagnosed with depression or anxiety or have some kind of mood changes and not feel like themselves. And initially they're deemed like crazy or put on antidepressants or something like that. And so that's probably the number one, like the first sign that hormones are starting to change. And that's usually when the progesterone levels start to drop. So I'd say that's number one. Probably number two is then the weight gain. So mainly the midsection where people are like, okay, I used to be able to either cut calories or do keto or, just exercise a little bit more and the weight would come off, and that's no longer working.
Okay. And that is one of the areas that I've noticed. Probably around 43. I'll be 46 this year. So I think it was around year 43 that I feel like I woke up one morning and there it was.
Yes.
Why the midsection? Why does that happen?
Yeah. So average age of menopause is around 51. Okay. Perimenopause starts usually 10 years before that, so 41. So when you're woke up at 43, that's almost like spot on, right? Of when these changes start to happen.
Okay.
And the first thing that usually happens is a drop in DHEA levels, which is a mother hormone that gets converted to a little bit of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol, or like stress hormones. Okay. And then the second thing that usually drops is progesterone. So all of a sudden you go from having these nice regular cycles of ups and downs, even though they might be crazy, like for some women, menstruation is insane, right? But now you're throwing in that change of hormones into the mix that you're not used to. And that's the one thing is the belly is where it goes to. So usually that fluctuation between the estrogen and progesterone levels really mess things up.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Are
Yeah.
there certain are there certain foods that women should be adding more of around that age or staying away from?
Fiber is probably one of the most important things that needs to be added. So I know a lot of women will eat a decent amount of fiber, at least those that are kind of in tune to their diet to begin with, but it becomes even more important when the hormone fluctuations start.
Okay.
Okay. And then in terms of supplementation, like magnesium is the next one in terms of that.
Okay, let's go back to fiber. So
Yeah.
when I would do nutritional counseling with clients, customers, that I one thing I heard a lot, pretty much
Mhm.
with every single person was, "Oh, I eat a ton of fiber." Okay, well, let's talk about that. What is a ton of fiber to you? I don't know. I have a couple, servings of veggies, an apple. They're not getting what they should be getting. My opinion, it's around 25 to 35 grams a day.
Exactly. And when you're pushing perimenopause, you really need to go closer to that 35 grams.
Wow. Okay. And most Americans, most women are not getting even close to that. What would you say, maybe on the 10 grams a day,
If
maybe
that,
less?
yeah.
Wow. And with the fiber that's in food, they really do need to supplement, not just use food as
Exactly.
fiber, correct?
Yeah, that's what I find, especially in the, traditional American diet. You gotta eat a lot of fruits and veggies to get up to that point. So
Yeah. Yeah.
usually for
Wow.
most women, supplementation is needed.
Okay. What, your opinion, what would be a good supplement? Is it a combination of soluble, insoluble, or focusing on one over the other?
Yeah, my go-to usually that I tell women is psyllium husk. So like with Metamucil,
Mm-hmm.
it works great in terms of bowel movements, but also has, like most fibers, the other benefits is if you take it 30 minutes before the first meal of the day, it also contributes to weight loss. So there's studies out there where if that's the only thing that you change, you'll still lose weight by doing that. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
The second thing with psyllium husk or any type of fiber that's gonna bind the fat that potentially you eat in your diet is it's gonna help with cholesterol levels. So unfortunately, when the estrogen levels and progesterone start fluctuating, so during the perimenopause, women they'll go get their labs done and they've eaten pristine and worked out their entire life, and all of a sudden their doctor says you have high cholesterol. And they're like, what? Like, that's not possible. Like, I do everything perfect. How could I possibly have high cholesterol? Well, it's because those hormone levels are changing. So sometimes just bumping up that fiber level and then having that 30 minutes before the first meal of the day is also going to balance the lipid levels and put the cholesterol into a good balance.
Okay.
Okay.
And
And
another
then
thing, fiber, it allows you to feel fuller, so you're not consuming as much,
exactly.
correct?
Yeah, and I actually use that as a hack for a lot of my weight loss patients, where if you have that hunger feeling all day long, or say you're going to an event or like a buffet or something like that, by consuming that fiber before you go and allowing it to fill up your stomach, you're way less likely to overeat.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then the third thing with fiber is you get the bowel regulation. So I don't know about you, but when women are pregnant, your levels of progesterone, they go really high, right? And so a lot of women, when they're pregnant, they get constipated.
Yeah.
And right, so that hormone
Yeah.
imbalance. So that same thing in perimenopause, you're more likely to become constipated because of these hormonal fluctuations. So just adding in that extra bit of fiber is going to help with the bowel regulation too.
Okay. Wow. And with the no, that is considered insoluble, correct? It acts like a broom to flush everything out, the intestines, the
Exactly. Yeah.
colon. Okay.
Mhm.
Push it out, push it out.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, let's talk real quick about magnesium. You had mentioned magnesium. Now there are different forms of magnesium. Which one do you suggest?
Well, it depends what you're trying to treat, but I would say biglycinate or threonate. Okay. But also going back to the bowel issue that we just talked about, some women need mag citrate, which helps with the bowel movements. Okay. And I have some women that literally take all three, just depending on what their needs are. So any type of magnesium is fantastic, but if you need more for going to the bathroom, citrate is better. And
Okay.
if you want more for brain health and optimal like neurostimulation as we get older and we start forgetting things,
Mm-hmm.
the magnesium threonate works better for that for the brain.
Okay. Is that 3NA?
Threonate.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I had no idea. I knew about magnesium. Was it citrate for looser stools,
Correct.
getting things
Yeah.
moving? I have used that. I do like that form of magnesium. And that the constipation during pregnancy and during times of stress, I've noticed
Absolutely.
my body start shutting down as well. So I've had to up fiber, more water, and then also use magnesium at night to get some relief.
Yeah.
So women's
And
bodies, they're just
right. But you
they're
also
all
mentioned
over.
a good point about water, because if you're not hydrating enough with these, they won't, like, you might end up, it might be more of a detriment, right? So you really need to make sure you're consuming enough water to the point where when you're peeing, your water's clear, right? Or
Yeah,
close.
yeah. So I know the regular medical advice is 64 ounces, 8 ounces, or 8 ounce glasses of water a day, 64 ounces. But
Yes,
that's not this, that's, it really depends on everybody's body. Now, I've
sure.
read other articles that say it should be 3/4 well, at least half your body weight in ounces. So, which depending on,
I see that.
each individual, it could be more, it could be less. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I would say probably 64 ounces at minimal, unless you have chronic kidney disease or some other condition that prevents you from drinking that much water, right? Or if you're on a fluid restriction by your doctor,
Oh, okay.
right? But most women, I would say minimum 64 ounces, but pushing it up to 128 in some scenarios.
Yeah, gallon, gallon of water. Some days it's really difficult to get that water in. It's just you're trying to choke it down and it's not working too well. Coffee does not count. I know probably a lot of women that are going to be listening to this, that are listening to this, they love coffee, and that does not count. I don't feel it counts towards water intake because coffee is a diuretic. So it's pulling even more water. So, probably upping the water intake to counteract that coffee as well, correct?
That's right. I
Yeah,
usually advise too, if you have a cup of coffee, like I'm guilty, I like my coffee too, right? But
yeah.
in between, so say if I have 2 cups in the morning, I make a point of having a glass of water after each cup of coffee or before, depending, right? Just so you can match that diuretic effect of it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. What else outside of magnesium and fiber, water, what other nutrition wise, what can women focus on?
I'd
What's
say that
something that really is top of your mind?
probably protein. That's the next biggest one.
Okay. And how much protein do you suggest?
My goal usually is to get to 100 grams. Obviously, it's dependent on body size. Okay. But if you're really looking for muscle maintenance or muscle building, depending on your size, getting up to 100 grams, if not more.
Okay. Now that to me, that number seems so far off, so outrageous,
Yeah.
but it's not really that difficult when you're breaking down meals, not the three standard meals a day, but breaking it down to maybe 4, 5, or 6 meals a day, 3 main ones, 2 snacks, but incorporating protein with each meal. Correct?
Yes.
Better?
Better, but I think it also depends on the person.
Yeah.
Right? I know there's a lot of women that don't like, say animal protein, for instance, right? If you're having a lot of fruits and veg, it's a lot more challenging to reach that protein intake. But if
Mhm.
you're somebody that has eggs, chicken, beef, whatever throughout the week, you're gonna be more likely to attain it. And then also there are so many, I'm not much for processed foods, but in terms of protein supplements, even the vegan ones, there's so many out there right now where you can get 25 grams in one serving,
Yeah.
right? So if
Mhm.
you need to incorporate that, if you know you're just not going to get enough in your regular daily intake, that's one way of supplementing to get to your protein.
And protein shakes. There's
Yes.
so many great brands out there. I typically look for one that is around 100 calories, lower in carbs, but has at least 20, 25 grams of protein per scoop.
Yeah.
And then I add in ground flaxseed, which
Right.
is
Extra
um,
fiber.
Yep. Oh yeah. That seems to do the trick as well.
Yes.
But when you, like for me as an example, I'll start off my morning with a protein shake and I can crank out like 50, 60 grams of protein right away in the morning.
Yeah,
And then that leaves, just a little bit throughout the rest of the day, which seems way more doable. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, you have your chicken, your fish, your like you said, your beef, turkey. I mean, those are all higher in protein as well. And then why focus on protein over higher carbs for women around this age?
Is more for hormone balancing. Okay. So this is very interesting, and you'll, depending on diets around the world, right? Like some areas are more vegan or vegetarian, more animal-based proteins. But one of the things with vegetables is they will increase certain levels of hormones.
Hmm.
Okay. And higher levels of protein will decrease certain levels of hormones. So it goes back to like finding that proper balance for each individual. Now, I'll share with you women that have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is where they have more male androgen. So they have higher levels of testosterone, higher levels of DHEA, and very high levels of estrogen. And these are the women in general that are a lot taller. So you could probably, if you go through your grade school class, you've always got like one girl that was like 5'9", 6'2", something like that. Like, right? And then potentially like hair growth, deeper voice, acne, right? That's like your typical PCOS patient that has higher levels of testosterone. The best diet for them is actually a higher protein diet and less vegetables, and it helps balance them out.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And then higher amounts. So, like we talked about with fiber, with fruits and veggies,
Yeah.
that will actually increase your estrogen levels. So it's finding that, that sweet spot of, making sure you're getting enough protein so that you can help maintain the waistline and your muscles as we get older, and then enough fiber. So from those fruits and veggies, so you're maintaining your estrogen levels as well.
Okay. So that just opened up another door for me for
Yeah.
higher estrogen.
Yeah.
I've read a lot of really bad studies and reports on estrogen, higher estrogen levels being terrible for women. And
So
now you're saying some foods actually increase that, healthy foods increase estrogen?
tofu is probably the worst for increasing estrogens.
Okay.
Okay. Now there's different types of estrogens. So this is just going to complicate things a little bit more. Right. So there are three types of estrogens, okay, the main ones. There's estrone, which is E1. There's estradiol, which is E2, and there's estriol, which is E3. When you do random reading about estrogens being bad, it's usually estrone. That's the one that is more metabolic, that comes from belly fat. So say you're let's say obese, okay? Say you're like 250 or 300 pounds and a lot of your weight is in your belly and it's just fat weight. That fat is metabolically active. That fat secretes its own estrogen, specifically estrone. And that's the say bad estrogen that puts us at higher risk for heart attacks and strokes and breast cancers and uterine cancers.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Whereas estradiol, which is what the ovaries produce, that actually does the opposite. Okay. That actually reduces our risk of osteoporosis, reduces our risk of breast cancer and uterine cancer, and also reduces our risk of heart attacks, strokes, and dementia. So, right?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I
So
feel
this
like
goes
I
It
feel like
goes back to that natural balance of everything, that homeostasis, right? Just
yeah.
making sure your body gets I don't want to say the right amount of everything, but you don't want to do too much of one way or too little the other way. It's just keeping that natural balance to make sure that we live as healthy as possible.
Seems like a fine line that somebody needs guidance on.
Yeah, but our bodies are pretty smart as it is. I think it comes down to if you're kind to your body, right? And you put good stuff into it, it will be nice to you coming back. But
Okay.
if you throw like junk food or processed food stuff on a continuous basis and you don't take care of yourself, you're gonna go down that other pathway of having higher levels of estrogen.
Okay. Okay. Wow. I feel like a few of these things that we just talked about could be a whole other webinar in itself. And I'm
Yes.
going to have you back because I feel like we have a lot more to discuss, a lot more to talk about. But I did get a few questions beforehand from some women, and if it's okay with you, I'm just going to read off some of these questions. Um, let's see. I'm trying to scroll for a good one. How do hormonal balances affect weight management in women, and what specific challenges do they pose? I feel like we kind of talked about that one earlier. Um, we talked about nutrition, hormones, dietary adjustments, um, exercise. Let's talk about that one for a minute. With regular exercise, how does that influence hormone levels? And for women coming into perimenopause age, what do you suggest they incorporate more of
Yeah.
into their daily life, and what they should really stay away from?
Okay. I would say the most common thing that I see, women in general do way too much cardio and not enough weight bearing exercises. Okay. So going into perimenopause and menopause, maintaining and building muscle is the most important. And in terms of hormone balancing, that will help the most. So the more we work our muscle, we're going to build more of our own testosterone and DHEA levels.
Okay.
And then looking down in the future. So I share this with women not to scare them, but to encourage them to do weight bearing exercises when they're younger. Because at age 65, we lose the ability to build new muscle. So the more you can do now to train your body to have as much muscle as possible so that when you reach age 65, you can at least conserve it,
Okay.
it's the less likely you're gonna need a walker or a wheelchair, and the more independent you can be as you get older, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's important for all of us. We want to maintain our independence as long as possible.
True. True.
So
Oh,
the more weight bearing exercises you can do now, it'll help with the testosterone levels, and then you'll have way better benefit down the road.
okay. So more strength training, and you don't have to go all out as heavy as possible. You
Right.
don't need to spend an hour in the gym. What do you suggest time-wise? Like 30 minutes, a good 20-minute workout? Does it all
Yeah, I
depend?
think during the day, I'd say it depends on the schedule, right? Because I don't want to say, hey, work out 20 minutes every single day of the week when you physically can't. So the more you can and I don't want to say more because sometimes overdoing it goes the opposite way too.
Yeah.
So go with your own schedule. If you're somebody that prefers doing 20 minutes 7 days a week, do that. If you're somebody that prefers doing 1 hour, 3 to 4 days a week, then do that, right? I think it's more important to do something than do nothing. And then incorporate something that you like into your routine rather than something that you dread doing on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Cardio. I know you said limit that more, but it does have some benefits as we get older. Um, is there, I've been reading about training zones.
Mhm. For
Is
heart
there a
rate.
specific, yeah, heart rate training zones? Is there a
Yep.
specific heart rate for cardio that you suggest?
If you can get up to 80% of your target, so your heart rate changes, that target changes depending on how old you are.
Mhm.
Right? So when you're 18, you can reach a much higher target than say when you're 45 or 50.
Yeah.
So if you can reach closer to that 80%, but do it in increments. So like that's where HIIT training is great because you get your heart rate up fast, right, to a target level, but then you have that rest and recovery time.
Yeah.
And then you can do the weight bearing in between.
Okay. I love HIIT training, and it's high intensity interval training. So I've never considered myself a runner. It was just something I've tried running. I just don't enjoy it. My mind is
Yeah.
going off in all different directions, but I like HIIT training. So I'll walk for, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and I'll run, not sprint, but I'll run at a harder pace for a minute or two. And then I walk again for a couple minutes. And then I just repeat those cycles over and over for the duration that I'm working out. Um, I feel like that's very doable for women. And they don't have to start off with, running for a minute and then walking. Start off with maybe 15 seconds and then
Yeah,
walk.
you don't even have to, even just fast walking, right?
Yep.
So you can start with a low walk, like say if you were at the shopping mall, and then do your 15 seconds where you're walking as fast as possible,
Yep.
right? So just everyone has their own starting point.
Yep. Exactly. That's great. That's great. I wonder we have time for maybe one more question. Did we talk about balance hormones and how it impacts mental health?
Just a little bit with the progesterone. So that's kind of where we got into the first most common thing I see when people present to the office is usually depression or anxiety. Um,
Brain fog.
right? And that brain fog with that, with the deficit of hormones, specifically progesterone.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and then the concern, like honestly, it's often family members or husbands that are like, okay, I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to go get help, right? Um, and that's where most commonly women will end up on antidepressants when they just need a little bit of balancing with their hormones to improve that,
Okay. Okay. So there is a reason that they're just feeling off.
right?
It's not that they're losing their mind, they're not going crazy. There is a hormonal imbalance that can be corrected.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Kristen, we are almost out of time, but if people that are watching the webinar, how can they get in contact with you if they want to know more, if they want to maybe connect with you, meet with you online, because you do in person and online consulting, correct?
That's exactly right. So I have two practices. I have one in Ontario, Canada, and the other one in Florida. So our Florida website is bmedicalflorida.com and the Canadian one is bmedicalcenter.com. And both of those will have our contact, phone number, email on there. You can also reach me personally. My email is Dr. Kupan, DrKupeyan, at the letter B medicalcenter.com. Feel free to reach out and we can set something up that way.
Okay, this has been amazing. I really appreciate your time. I know you are super busy,
Very,
but I really appreciate your time chatting with me. And I know you've helped me. I know you're going to help every other woman that is watching this webinar. And it's going to set off some other questions that they have. So this
excellent.
was
I
really
can't wait.
great. And I would like to do this again.
Absolutely. And thank you again for putting this together. I think the more information we can get out to women out there, the better, right?
Yes,
It's very
absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again for your time, and I will put all of your contact information at the bottom of the webinar so people can have some resources and how to reach out to you. All
Perfect. Thank you so much.
right. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.